4 years. That's how long I'd been grinding at Linwood & Mercer, this mid-sized corporate branding firm in Denver. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, successful campaigns, and consistently exceeding targets. I wasn't the loudest person in the room, but I was the one everyone came to when shit hit the fan. My manager, Carla Mendoza, had been dropping hints about a new marketing manager position opening up after Q1, and I was quietly confident it had my name on it. Then Camille Rivers walked into our office. 27, fresh MBA from a decent school, perfectly styled blonde hair, and a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. Carla assigned her to me for training, specifically to shadow me on our biggest account, the Bluebird Coffee rebrand. A $2.3 million project that I'd been leading for 8 months. "Renee, you're the best we have at onboarding," Carla said during our team meeting. "Plus, mentoring will look great on your performance review." I should have seen the red flag, but honestly, I was flattered. And Camille seemed genuinely eager to learn. Those first 3 months were intense. I taught her everything, and I mean everything. How to build client decks that told a story instead of just listing features. How to navigate our labyrinthine approval process. How to read between the lines when clients said they loved the direction but their body language screamed otherwise. How to coordinate between our notoriously territorial design and data teams without starting World War III. I created detailed workflows, shared my private template library, even gave her access to my personal client relationship notes, 4 years of carefully documented preferences, pet peeves, and communication styles. She absorbed it all like a sponge. "You're amazing, Renee," she'd say, taking notes on everything. "I can't believe how much thought goes into all of this. You make it look so effortless." Camille wasn't just a quick learner, she was charming. She'd bring coffee for the design team, remember everyone's birthdays, and had this way of making even our most cantankerous clients feel heard. Within 6 weeks, she was handling client calls independently. By month 2, she was presenting campaign updates. By month 3, she was essentially running day-to-day operations while I focused on strategy. I was proud, honestly. There's something deeply satisfying about watching someone you've trained succeed. When Carla complimented my leadership development skills during a client call, with a client on the line, no less, I felt like I was finally being seen as management material. The Bluebird project was crushing it. Their new brand identity had increased customer engagement by 47% in test markets. The client was so happy they were already talking about expanding our contract. I'd built something beautiful, and I'd successfully transferred that knowledge to someone who could help it grow. Then came the email. Subject: Exciting organizational updates, Q1 2024. Team: We're thrilled to announce several key promotions effective immediately. Camille Rivers has been promoted to marketing manager, where she'll be overseeing our consumer brand portfolio including the Bluebird Coffee account. I read that line 5 times before it sank in. Then I read the rest of the email, looking for my name. Maybe there was another promotion? Maybe they'd created a parallel position? Nothing. I sat there staring at my laptop screen in our open office, trying to keep my face neutral while my world tilted sideways. Around me, people were congratulating Camille, who was beaming like she'd just won the lottery. Which, I guess, she had. The next morning, I knocked on Milo Green's office door. Milo was our HR liaison, soft-spoken but fair, the kind of guy who actually listened when people came to him with problems. "Hey Renee, come in. I was wondering when you'd stop by." At least he had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I just want to understand the decision," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. I thought I was being considered for the marketing manager role. Milo sighed, pulling off his glasses to clean them, his nervous tick. "You were considered. Leadership was looking for someone who demonstrated initiative and showed fast adaptability to our evolving client needs." Initiative? I'd literally built the processes Camille was now managing. Adaptability? I'd been handling curveballs for 4 years. "Can you give me specific feedback on what I could improve for future opportunities?" "Your work is excellent, Renee. Always has been. It's more about visible leadership presence." Camille really impressed everyone with how quickly she took ownership of client relationships. Client relationships I'd introduced her to. Using strategies I'd taught her. With my templates and my documented insights. But I just nodded and thanked him for his time. No point arguing with a decision that had already been made. The first week of Camille's promotion was a masterclass in awkwardness. She moved into the corner office that I'd assumed would be mine, decorated it with plants and motivational posters, and started scheduling strategic alignment meetings with everyone. She also started treating me differently. Where before she'd been collaborative and grateful, now she was managerial. She'd interrupt me in meetings, redirect my emails through her for consistency, and began introducing herself as the lead on projects I'd been running solo for months. The worst part? She was bad at it. Don't get me wrong, Camille could execute tasks I'd trained her on perfectly. But marketing management isn't just about following playbooks. It's about reading situations, making judgment calls, and understanding the deeper strategy behind each decision. She had the moves memorized, but she didn't understand the game. I watched her fumble a crisis call when Bluebird's competitor launched a suspiciously similar campaign. Instead of pivoting our messaging to emphasize differentiation, Marketing 101, she panicked and suggested we scrap 3 months of work. I had to jump in and salvage the situation, which she later credited to great team collaboration in her weekly report. But what really broke something inside me happened 3 weeks after her promotion. I was grabbing lunch from the cafe downstairs when I heard familiar laughter from a table near the windows. Camille was there with Marcus from the data team and Jennifer from design, people I'd worked closely with for years. Honestly, I don't know why everyone was so worried about the transition, Camille was saying, stabbing her salad with more force than necessary. Like, Renee's great at execution, but she's not leadership material. The strategy stuff? I picked up what she knew in maybe 2 months. Everyone's replaceable, you know? Marcus looked uncomfortable. Jennifer was studying her sandwich like it contained the secrets of the universe. But Camille kept going. Don't get me wrong, she's useful for the detail work. But vision? Innovation? That comes from management. It's about seeing the bigger picture, not just following processes someone else created. I stood there holding my turkey wrap, invisible behind a pillar, listening to someone dismiss 4 years of my career as detail work. Someone I'd poured my knowledge into, who was now managing accounts I'd built, using systems I'd designed, presenting strategies I'd developed. Replaceable. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and really looked at my situation. I could quit. I could transfer departments. I could file a complaint with HR about hostile work environment. Or I could do something else entirely. I opened my laptop and started typing. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you incredible freedom to operate. While Camille was busy playing dress-up in her new office, I began quietly building something she couldn't see. First, documentation. I'm talking about everything, every process I'd created, every template I'd developed, every strategic framework I'd built. I pulled timestamps from our internal wiki showing when I'd authored original methodologies. I saved email chains where I'd walked Camille through complex decision trees step by step. I screenshot presentations where she'd later recycled my analysis word for word without attribution. But documentation was just the foundation. The real work was positioning. See, there was this account that had been gathering dust on Carla's back burner, Verava Naturals, a luxury skincare startup out of Boulder. They'd approached us 6 months earlier looking for a complete brand strategy, but Carla had deprioritized them because their initial budget was smaller than our usual minimum. I'd been intrigued by their story, 2 women chemists who developed a proprietary peptide technology, but with Bluebird consuming all my bandwidth, I'd never had a chance to dig deeper. Now I had time. I researched everything about Verava. Their founders, their technology, their target market, their competitors. I identified their real problem. They weren't just another skincare brand, they were a science company that happened to make cosmetics. Their messaging was all wrong, focusing on typical beauty benefits instead of their revolutionary research. More importantly, I identified their opportunity. The clean beauty market was about to explode, driven by Gen Z consumers who actually read ingredient labels. Verava's peptide technology could position them as the Tesla of skincare, premium, innovative, and scientifically superior. I put together a speculative brand strategy presentation. Not a pitch deck, a full strategic framework with market analysis, positioning recommendations, and a 3-phase rollout plan. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went around Carla and reached out directly to Desmond Shaw, our head of talent development. Desmond was interesting, mid-40s, former McKinsey consultant who'd joined L&M to build something meaningful. He had a reputation for spotting talent and wasn't particularly concerned with traditional hierarchies. Perfect. Desmond, I've been developing some strategic thinking around untapped market opportunities, I wrote in my email. Would you have 20 minutes to discuss a potential client expansion that could open up an entirely new vertical for us? We met at a coffee shop near the office. I walked him through my Verava analysis, the market opportunity, the positioning strategy, the revenue potential. His eyes lit up when I showed him the projected numbers. This is sophisticated thinking, Renee. How long have you been working on this? It started as curiosity about accounts we weren't pursuing, but it's evolved into a broader framework for identifying undervalued opportunities in emerging markets. He leaned back, studying me. Leadership thinking. Have you shared this with Carla? I wanted to develop it more fully first. Get your perspective on whether it aligns with our strategic direction. It absolutely does. Keep developing this. And Renee? Start thinking bigger. This kind of analysis, this is what separates analysts from strategists. Meanwhile, Camille was slowly imploding. Without my constant support, she was making the kinds of mistakes that compound over time. She'd approve design concepts without understanding brand guidelines, agree to client requests that violated our standard contracts, and make promises to stakeholders without consulting our capacity. The Bluebird project, my baby, was starting to show cracks. The breaking point came during a quarterly review presentation to Bluebird's executive team. Camille had prepared a standard performance deck using our template, but she fundamentally misunderstood what the numbers meant. When their CMO asked about the 23% dip in engagement among 25 to 34-year-olds, she gave some vague answer about market fluctuations and seasonal adjustments. I was taking notes in the back of the room when I realized she had no idea that the dip was because they changed their Instagram posting schedule against my recommendation. It was a fixable problem, we just needed to revert to the original cadence, but she didn't understand the connection between strategy and execution. The CMO looked confused, then concerned, then annoyed. I thought the whole point of this rebrand was to strengthen our connection with younger demographics. Are you telling me we're moving backward? Carla jumped in to smooth things over, but the damage was done. After the call, she asked me to assist Camille with some cleanup on the Bluebird account. Not acknowledge that Camille's leadership was the problem, just quietly fix it while she maintained the title and the credit. That's when I knew my plan was working. 2 weeks later, Desmond called me into his office. I've been thinking about our conversation, he said, closing his laptop. What would you say to leading the Verava pitch as a proof of concept? There's talk upstairs about creating a new role, regional strategy lead, focused on emerging market opportunities. Interested? I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was doing backflips. Very interested. What would that look like? You'd report directly to me, work across departments, focus on strategic development rather than account management. It's a significant step up from analyst level. Significant step up. As in, 2 levels above Camille's new position. I'd love to explore that opportunity. Good. Let's see what you can do with Verava first. Full strategic proposal, implementation timeline, budget projections. Think of it as your audition. I spent the next month building the most comprehensive brand strategy proposal of my career. Market research, competitive analysis, consumer psychology insights, phased rollout plans, success metrics, risk mitigation strategies, everything. I interviewed potential customers, consulted with trend forecasters, even brought in a biochemist friend to validate their technology claims. The presentation was flawless. Verava signed on the spot. Not just for the initial brand strategy, but for full year-long engagement worth $1.8 million. Suddenly, everyone at L&M was very interested in my emerging market expertise. The announcement came on a Thursday morning in April. Subject: New Strategic Leadership Role. Team. We're excited to announce that Renee Alston has been promoted to Regional Strategy Lead, reporting to Head of Talent Development Desmond Shaw. In this role, Renee will be identifying and developing high-growth opportunities in emerging markets, with initial focus on the clean beauty and sustainable lifestyle verticals. I watched the email hit everyone's inboxes from my desk, then counted the seconds until people started looking up from their computers. Marcus grinned and gave me a thumbs up. Jennifer walked over to congratulate me. Even Milo from HR sent a warm follow-up message. Camille's office door stayed closed all morning. The beautiful thing about the regional strategy lead position was that it wasn't just a promotion, it was a completely different game. While Camille was managing existing accounts with processes I'd created, I was building new business from scratch. While she was executing campaigns, I was designing market strategies. While she was in the weeds of day-to-day operations, I was in strategic planning meetings with senior leadership. The Virava success opened doors I'd never expected. Within 2 months, I was consulting on 3 other emerging market opportunities. Within 6 months, my strategic recommendations had generated over $5 million in new business for L&M. Camille, meanwhile, was struggling. The Bluebird account continued to deteriorate under her management. Client satisfaction scores dropped. Internal team morale plummeted as people realized she couldn't solve problems, only delegate them. Carla had to step in more and more frequently, eventually removing Camille from client-facing responsibilities altogether. I think there might have been some miscommunication about role expectations, Carla told me during a coffee catch-up in June. It was as close to an apology as I was going to get. These things happen, I replied graciously. Everyone's finding their fit. But we both knew what she meant. They'd promoted the wrong person, and now they were dealing with the consequences. The final straw for Camille came in August. Carla assigned her to shadow me on a new account, essentially demoting her back to the training role she'd started in, except now she was learning from someone who'd been promoted above her level. The irony was delicious. During our first strategy session for the new client, Camille kept trying to apply the Bluebird playbook to a completely different industry. When I explained why that wouldn't work, she got defensive. I think you're overcomplicating this, Renee. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Sometimes, I agreed. But this client is entering a saturated market with undifferentiated products. Simple solutions will get them lost in the noise. They need sophisticated positioning to create clear competitive advantages. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. That's when I realized the fundamental difference between us. Camille had learned my processes, but I had learned how to think. She could execute playbooks, but I could write them. She could manage what existed, but I could build what didn't exist yet. 2 weeks later, she submitted her resignation. Pursuing opportunities that better align with my career vision, she wrote in her farewell email. The corporate equivalent of "it's not you, it's me." Marcus told me later that she'd landed a similar role at a smaller agency in Phoenix. Good for her. Everyone deserves to find their level. 6 months after Camille left, Desmond promoted me again, this time to Director of Strategy Initiatives, overseeing a team of 4 strategists and responsible for L&M's entire emerging market portfolio. At 32, I was the youngest director in company history. The promotion came with a corner office, a significant salary increase, and something more valuable than either of those, respect. Not the conditional respect you get for being useful, but the deep respect that comes from being irreplaceable. Last month, L&M held its annual leadership retreat in the Rockies. 50-person team, beautiful venue, lots of strategic planning and team building. I was presenting our Q4 strategic priorities to the full group when a junior analyst, couldn't have been more than 24, approached me during the break. Renee, can I ask you something? I've been here 8 months, and I keep hearing people talk about how quickly you moved up. Like, you went from analyst to director in less than 2 years. How did you do it? She looked nervous, probably worried she was overstepping by asking such a direct question. I remembered being her age, hungry and uncertain, trying to decode the invisible rules of corporate advancement. You want the honest answer. She nodded eagerly. I stopped waiting for recognition and started building proof. I stopped trying to be indispensable at my current level and started making myself necessary at the next level. Most importantly, I stopped letting other people define what was possible for me. She was taking notes on her phone, which made me smile. But here's the thing, I continued, looking out at the mountain vista through the lodge windows. None of that would have mattered if I hadn't learned the most important lesson of my career. Which was? I turned back to her, remembering a conversation from 2 years ago, remembering someone laughing over lunch about how everyone was replaceable. Replaceable. I smiled. Not even close. Update. A few people have asked what happened to Camille. Last I heard through industry connections, she's doing fine in Phoenix, managing social media campaigns for local restaurants. Sometimes people find exactly the level where they belong, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be a strategist, and there's nothing wrong with being good at execution. I genuinely hope she's happy. The real lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about understanding your own value and being willing to bet on yourself when others won't. Camille thought I was replaceable because she'd learned to copy what I did. But copying isn't the same as creating, and managing isn't the same as leading. It took me getting passed over to realize that I'd been playing small, waiting for permission to be great instead of just being great. 4 years later, I'm still at L&M, now VP of Strategic Development. The emerging markets division I built has become one of our most profitable verticals. Verava Naturals went public last year, and we're still their primary strategic partner. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well, and building something so successful that people forget you were ever underestimated in the first place. To anyone reading this who feels overlooked or undervalued, document everything, build proof of your capabilities, and never let someone else's limited vision of you become your own. You're not replaceable. You're just getting started.